Hello, my name is Malcolm Cole. I'm a member of the Bookham Stamp Club, and I'd like to share with you today some of the items that make up my prisoner of war mail collection. What no one had expected in the summer of 1914 was the sheer number of prisoners who would fall into enemy hands and need to be transported immense distances back to camps and guarded, nursed, fed and kept warm. And no country entering the war had any experience of looking after prisoners in the numbers and for the length of time they now faced them. Of the British and Allied troops captured by the Germans on the Western Front over the course of the war, over 80% surrendered in just 2 4-month periods at the bracket ends of the conflict. These were August to November 1914 and March to June 1918, when there was movement on the battlefield in the shape of huge offensives by the German army. This cover was sent by Corporal Louis Leyer from the French 1st Artillery Regiment, who was captured at Maubeuge when the town surrendered to the Germans on the 7th of September 1914. Louis was among 49,000 Frenchmen captured at Maubeuge, and he was sent to the POW camp at Munster and subsequently moved to the camp at Dulmen on the 26th of February 1916. And the International Red Cross informed his family of his arrival at Dulmen on the 30th of September 1916. That's 7 months. 7 months of waiting, which must have been really tremendously worrying for the family. This is the reverse of a picture postcard sent to a chap called Bernard George Wells, who joined the Navy on his 18th birthday in 1913. And he was captured at sea and sent via Wilhelmshaven to the POW camp at Soltau. And whilst he was there, his sister, the lady in the photograph here, sent him a postcard with a photograph of the family on. And it shows her husband, Henry Hacker, and their 2 children, Reginald and Rhoda. The card was quite clearly posted inside an envelope, because it only has the censor mark on the top of the card here from the Soltau censor. And the card's quite sweet. It says, "Dear old Bern, you can't come to see us. We have come to see you. Hope you will like the photo. You can see what a big boy and girl your nephew and niece are. Heaps of love from us all, Rhoda." And getting cards like this from families at home was so important to people in camps. They needed this contact with family. And with that in mind, the International Committee of the Red Cross gathered information on prisoners from a variety of different sources. And one of these sources was this card here. This is from the Joint Central Evidence Bureau, the inquiry point for prisoners of war. It was based in Vienna, where it was posted on the 4th of December 1916. And this card is posted to Wilhelm Lichnowsky in Dropout, and it basically tells him that his 19-year-old cadet son, also called Wilhelm, is a prisoner of war in a Russian camp at Tobolsk in Siberia, and that he was in good health. That must have been quite a relief. Although perhaps being in a Russian camp, that wouldn't necessarily be a relief. That would be pretty dodgy in its own right. This cover here was sent to Ernest Albert Martin, a rifleman from the 5th London Rifle Brigade, who was captured at Gommecourt on the 1st of July 1916. And he was transferred eventually to the camp at Sennelager in Westphalia, Germany. The Times newspaper had reported Ernest as being missing in action on the 10th of August 1916, but the following month, on the 19th of September, they reported that he was in fact in German hands as a prisoner of war. I have no idea whether Ernest Martin actually survived his captivity or survived the war. Sennelager was truly a dreadful place. One prisoner there, Captain Robert Dolby from the Royal Army Medical Corps, stated in his diaries, almost every infectious disease was known, headed by scarlet fever, TB, pneumonia, typhoid, dysentery, cerebrospinal meningitis, mumps and measles. Apparently sewage was dumped above the camp, and that seeped into the watercourses that was the sole source of water for the camp. During World War I, around 2.5 million soldiers from the Austro-Hungarian army and about 200,000 Germans entered Russian captivity. And although the registration of prisoners according to nationality was often haphazard, ethnicity began to play a part. Slav POWs tended to be interred no farther east than Omsk, but Germans and Magyars could expect to be sent to Siberia. And this card was posted from Berezovka, which was the chief city of Siberia in eastern Russia, on the western shore of Lake Baikal, and had a large POW camp housing mainly German and Austro-Hungarians. And this card was posted to Captain Leopold Hof, who was an Austro-Hungarian light infantryman based at St. Polten in Low Austria. The card is addressed to Dear Poldy, so obviously Leopold is a shortened version of. The first two lines of this card are interesting. It says, "I received your postcard from the 8th of June and the 25th of August. Thank you very much. Congratulations on becoming a captain. I'm glad to hear that you're well enough to be at the front. I'm jealous. Good luck." How optimistic was that? If I go back to this rectangular sensor mark here on the card is Irkutsk, and this is where it is here. And this was the central point where lots of POW camps in Siberia sent their mail to for censorship and for onward transmission back to Geneva and through to other countries. And it's right on the Siberian and Mongolian border, so it must have been a really cold and unpleasant place. This card, sent to Alberta Ville, was sent from Totsko. This was another camp in Russia, and they had a tremendous typhus epidemic there when, in the same year this card was posted in 1915, and about 17,000 of the 25,000 prisoners died of typhus. Typhus was a horrible disease, and it ran through camps like wildfire. Some prisoners, however, like Joseph Baumeister here, were taken prisoner and housed in style. In 1915, he was sent to the Chateau de la Londe in the Dordogne region of France. The chateau had been requisitioned by the French army in 1915, and this is how it looks today. His family wrote to him, and the card was hand-stamped by the censor. This postcard was sent by Second Lieutenant Wilfrid Francis Drain of the 7th Battalion Royal West Kent Regiment, who was wounded in his right arm when he was captured in March 1918 at St. Quentin on the first day of the Battle of the Somme. And he was sent via different places to officers' camp at Pforzheim. And he sent it to 46 Athelston Road in Margate, which was the address where his father lived and where he indeed was born in 1896. This makes him 21 years old when he posted this card. And this is his International Red Cross archive record. It shows he's a prisoner of war, and when he was born, he gives his father's name and all that kind of contact stuff. It's really, really interesting. He was also mentioned in the Queen's Own Gazette, monthly record of regimental doings of the Royal West Kent Regiment, and he appears here as Second Lieutenant W.F. Drain in May 1918 as a prisoner of war. And this is the front of the card. This is the camp where he was kept prisoner, which could easily be mistaken for a rather glamorous hotel. Indeed, it had its own library. And pictures like this were taken by local photographers in the village or the towns and printed up into postcards and sold to the prisoners to send home. All part of a propaganda background as well, really. During the First World War, a lady called Olga Spitzer, she collaborated with the Prisoners of War Agency, the Civil Interns Agency, and the Red Cross, and established contacts with prison camps in Germany. And she founded a self-help organization called Le Paquet du Prisonnier de Guerre, the Prisoners of War Packet. This was based in Geneva, and its main object was to send food and clothing to French and Belgian soldiers who had no family to try and support them. This card was sent from Cassel. If I turn the card upside down, you can see Cassel. And Cassel was another camp that had a huge typhus epidemic in 1915. 1915 was a bad year for typhus, and the mortality rate was 11%. Most of the prisoners in Cassel, incidentally, worked in the nearby open-cast coal mine. And according to the official British historian of the Great War, Lieutenant General Sir James Edmonds, when typhus broke out in Cassel, the German guards withdrew until the epidemic had burnt itself out. So they left the camp, locked it, let people die off, and then when it was deemed safe, they opened the camp and went in again. I managed to find the International Red Cross record for Cleophas Boulogne, the guy who wrote this card, but unfortunately the reference here that the Red Cross have given, which links the Red Cross card to the German POW camp record, is incorrect, and I can't trace the actual prisoner of war record for this chap. Most POWs were preoccupied about food, and Private Mackay of the 13th Royal Scots Regiment was no exception. He was age 22 when he was captured, and he was sent to the POW camp at Friedrichsfeld in 1916. And he writes to his family, he writes to his mother specifically, asking for help. And roughly translated, writing it up in print, it says, "Dear Mama, I was very glad to hear, I was very glad to get your 3 letters from Kinniswood and to know that you and Papa are enjoying the country life." And then he goes on to ask, he complains, I presume Flossie is his sister or some similar relation. He wrote to her about meal, flour, etc., instead of tin stuff. So his family was obviously sending him things he didn't like. And also he wanted biscuits, especially the large wholemeal ones, which he reckoned were better. This card was sent by the Comité Bernois to help prisoners of war. And this was another semi-independent committee set up under the auspices of the Swiss Red Cross. And this particular card was sent by A. de Marion Gaia, who was a member of the 1st Regiment Chasseurs à Cheval, who was a patient at the hospital in Saltown. And this chap is writing to this committee asking for help. And it's in French, so I'll help you translate. And basically he's recognizing the fact that he's ill, he's in hospital, he's got malaria. But malaria is not on the approved list of maladies allowing repatriation via Switzerland. And he asked the committee to help him as he needed a change of climate. He's desperately trying to leave the camp and be repatriated via Switzerland, but his illness isn't on the list. From the outbreak of World War I, the people of Carlisle, as in towns and cities up and down the country, they donated money or offered services or gifts to support the war effort. As in other areas, a citizens' league was established in Carlisle in August 1914, only 1 week after the declaration of war. So this card would have been sent together with a parcel to a named prisoner, and on receipt of the parcel, they would take this card and return it with the date on and information as to whether they are receiving their parcels regularly, whether they're in good condition, do you want to make any changes, and is your address correct? It was a way of keeping track of prisoners as well. Nearly 18,000 charities were established during the 4 years of the First World War, and the most popular causes were the Comforts Funds, to send comforts to British and Empire troops, socks, shirts, chocolates and cigarettes were the most commonly ones requested by soldiers. And this help committee here, set up in Nottingham, was really the icon. This is the comfort fund that all others aspire to be like. And this card was returned by Private Edward Kirk. He was a private in the 10th Yorkshire Regiment from Nottinghamshire. And he was captured at Lewes and sent to the POW camp at Munster. And according to the Red Cross archives, he was a patient in the hospital, Lazaret Hospital, on the 30th of December 1915. He was awarded a military disability pension when he was discharged from the army in 1919. And here he's saying he's received a parcel, and the parcel contained 1 tin of dubbin. And for those of you of a certain age, you'll know that dubbin was the stuff you rubbed on boots to keep them waterproof. 1 tin of milk, some soap, and a chocolate pudding. All grand stuff for a prisoner. This is a similar card sent by Second Lieutenant John Alfred Bentley of A Company, Manchester Regiment, who was born in Castleton on the 24th of September 1896. And this regiment was formed on the 31st of August 1914 by the Lord Mayor and the major cotton producers of the city, and formed part of the first city battalion to be formed in Britain. So this was one of the really early POWs battalions. And John has, instead of sending the card back to the people that sent him the food parcel, he changed the address and sent it back to his father, J.W. Bentley Esquire, Stoke Hill House, Castleton, near Manchester. And here he's done it because he's actually changed location. He's actually based now in Mainz, where he was transferred, and his father didn't know that. John was one of many prisoners wounded and captured at St Quentin on the 21st of March 1918. He had a hand injury, he had a missing middle finger, and was moved to the camp at Gemmersheim before going to Mainz. He did survive the war, and he was repatriated on the 29th of November 1918, landing at Dover. Here's a copy of the prisoner of war record, the German prisoner of war camp record, with John Bentley, Lieutenant, Manchester Regiment, captured at St Quentin, and the name of his next of kin, so to speak, his contact, Mr. Bentley, Stoke Hill, Castleton, Manchester. Is a similar record showing that he was injured with a middle finger injury. This one, George Reed, he's also changed the name of the charity sending him the comfort box, and he's changed it to D.S. Crichton, Rowntree's, York. Now, D.S. Crichton was a Congregationalist minister hired by Joseph Rowntree in 1900 to manage and attend to the welfare of young male employees, and he kept a contact with employees during the war, and he often was the conduit through which families found out more about their family members. Mr. Rowntree, Joseph Rowntree, the founder of the chocolate company, was so patriotic in a way that he actually allowed the 8th Battalion, West Yorkshire Regiment, to billet at the factory on their way to Flanders. And this is a card taken at the time with the 8th Battalion G Company at Rowntree's, and on the back of the card he does actually mention one or two names, so we can actually identify one or two of the soldiers here. And Joseph Rowntree was so impressed with the battalion during their time at the Cocoa Works that he wrote to its commanding officer to express his appreciation for the very pleasant and cordial relations that existed between them. Another prisoner held at Munster was Private Thomas Herbert, attached to the 7th Field Ambulance, Royal Army Medical Corps. And he wrote an impassioned postcard to the Secretary of the Comforts Guild in Nottingham. And here it says, "Dear Sir, being a native of Nottinghamshire, I beg to ask, as I have no relations, to send me anything if you would be kind enough to assist me with a pair of socks or any small comfort of any kind. Thanking you for any kind consideration." So he had no person, no family to help him supplement his rather meagre rations. And here's a record of Thomas Herbert. This is the German prisoner of war camp record for him. Of course, officers were treated somewhat differently, and they were allowed to write letters to the Army and Navy stores, in this case in Victoria Street, London, to ask for clothing or food to be sent to them. This cover was posted in Gütersloh on the 31st of August 1916, and it arrived in London on the 11th of September 1916. That's less than 2 weeks from a prisoner of war camp to arrive in London. That's amazing during wartime. The Army and Navy had this Victoria Street premises where they were actually a portion of a distillery that was actually owned by Vickers and Company, and they leased a portion of it. And the store originally opened in February 1872. Not all prisoner of war camps were overseas, of course. There were some in England. And this is a card sent by Wilhelm Effenberg, who was a civilian internee. When war broke out, the British took all foreign nationals, certainly German nationals, and locked them up, basically. And one of the major camps was on the Isle of Man. Firstly, the camp was set up just outside Douglas in an old holiday camp. That proved not very pleasant. The conditions there were very bad. There were lots of problems with it. And a larger camp was set up at Nockelo, where this guy has written from. And he's addressed it to somebody Williams Esquire, the direction of Diskonto Gesellschaft, which was basically one of the largest German banking organizations that existed in wartime, in the First World War, and it was merged in 1929 with Deutsche Bank. Another card here, also from Nockelo, from the Isle of Man, was sent by Albert Klingenberg to his wife, and is a copy of the Red Cross archive card there that goes with it, and it shows the name of his wife as well. Well, that's come to the end of my very short presentation on the POW mail. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.